All right, an important part of any speech is having an outline. This will enable you to organize your ideas before you go up to the podium and give your speech. An outline is not necessarily a necessity for a speech, but it is a highly recommended part of preparing for giving a speech in a public situation. To start out an outline, you always want to have a topic. This will be included in your introduction. Your introduction can include an attention getter. That will be in all bold headings if you're typing it out, which is a suggested method of doing it, is typing it out so you can actually understand what it is, because a lot of people can't even read their own handwriting, myself included. So an attention getter, it represents the first words out of your mouth. So you want to have that credibility. You want to get the audience engaged right from the first thing that you say. The first thing out of your mouth, you want the audience to be, okay, I'm focused on that guy because he's getting my attention. Hence the name attention getter. It can be a joke if you're humorous and appropriate. It needs to be somewhat relevant to your topic. It could be a narrative story. It could be a shocking statement, fact, a statistic, poem, quote, question, visual aid, activity, anything along those lines. As long as it is somewhat pertinent to your topic, or you can tie it in, find a way to tie that into your topic. Then you're going to include your purpose statement. This statement should clarify to the audience what you're going to inform them about. It's going to introduce your topic. This is the main point of your introduction, not only for yourself, but for your audience as well. This is going to say, oh, this is what my speech is going to be about. I'm going to inform you about this. Not only should the introduction include that, it should be significant. You should tell them, why should I listen? Why should I be here? Why do I need to be here? Maybe the audience does not necessarily want to be here, but if they hear that this particular topic that you're talking about is going to be significant to them in some way or shape or form, they might say, oh, maybe I'll stay. Maybe I'll actually listen to the speech. You also want to include credibility for yourself. If you build tell the audience if you give the audience the impression that you're uncredible and you don't know what you're talking about, maybe you're not confident with the certain topic that you're speaking of, or maybe you just seem like you don't really want to be here, that will wane the audience's interest in your speech. So you want to make yourself seem as important to the topic as you can. You're going to try and say, oh, maybe you have a specific interest in this topic, that it's a hobby of yours, or maybe you have experience working in this field that you're going to inform us about. It's just going to help create trust between you and your audience and demonstrate that you know what you're discussing. That's the most important part of credibility. You should also have a preview statement included in your introduction. It should reveal all of your main points in one simple sentence and give the audience a clear picture of what is to come in your speech. One sentence is very key. You don't want your introduction to be longer than your speech. You're just going to tell them, this is what I'm talking about, and then you go and talk about it. You don't say, this is what I'm talking about. Oh, and by the way, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, A, B, C, D, E, F, I, Roman number 1, Roman 2, all that stuff. It's going to be simple, concise, and it's going to allow your audience to hear how many points they will hear within your speech. You're going to outline out your speech basically for your audience. Now, going from the introduction to your first part, you're going to have a major transition. This statement allows the audience to hear that you are moving from the introduction to the body, and it has to be relatively brief because this isn't what your speech is about. It includes a lot of the main things that are also included in the introduction, such as a purpose statement, significance, credibility, and also a preview statement. You're going to have a major transition between that little section. It shouldn't be the biggest part of your speech. That part of your speech is just to start to introduce what your speech is going to be about. Conclude the introduction and start the body paragraphs. You're going to have another major transition, such as now that we know what we're going to discuss, let us first look at A. Body. This is your first main point. You have as many main points as you want, as long as it stays within the time criteria set by whatever is appropriate for the audience that you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a bunch of third graders, second and third graders, you're not going to want to have a 20-minute speech because they'll be gone after the first 2 minutes. They're not going to want to listen to you after that. The body. You're going to have a main point, right? Provides a general opening sentence which previews information and evidence to come in the subpoints below. Now, your subpoints, they're related to the main point, obviously, but it provides more specific information and may include evidence to support. So if you start your speech in the body paragraph, you're going to have a main point. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about A. Now, A is important because, one. And in this work by such and such credible author from such and such university or from such and such corporation, he points out that this, and this. That could be part of your, part of building credibility for yourself. And it'll also come in handy when you have to have a subpoint that includes research or evidence to boost your main point. Now, between major points in your speech, you're going to have a minor transition. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. You can just close up your first point and move on to the next one, and maybe find out a way that they are connected. It may be beneficial to you to have your main points be connected in some way so that when you do a minor transition, it just flows right from one point to the other. You're going to do that for all of your main points, although, as I mentioned earlier, you don't want it to be too long. You want to keep your time frame appropriate for your audience. Now, after your last main point, you're going to want to have a major transition between your last main point and then your conclusion. You can never go wrong with in conclusion or finally will be the last thing. This is the last thing I'm going to address. Now that we've gone through all the main points, I'd like to conclude with, now that I have informed you about the specific topic that I wanted to inform you about, blah, blah, blah. This is why it's important. And in conclusion, this. You should have a summary statement so that the audience remembers what you talked about. You're going to want to say at the beginning, this is what I'm going to talk about. Then you talk about it. And then at the end, you say, this is what I talked about. So they will remember what you talked about. Now, you could also have a final thought in your conclusion statement that leaves your audience with a great last impression of you and your speech. Like the attention getter, you can use the devices such as a quote, a question, a story, a joke, etc. However, I wouldn't recommend using a joke at the end because that might leave the audience thinking that it's not necessarily good to end on a light note. You might want to start on a light note just to get the audience, engaged. Feel like, oh, okay, this is going to be, just a casual speech. At the end, maybe a quote, a story, or a question. Maybe almost like a call to action for the audience, so that they feel like they have been involved in your speech and they benefit from what you said. Last thing you're going to want to include into your outline is the works cited. Because if you don't, it's called plagiarism. Even if you just paraphrase something in your speech and don't specifically cite it in your speech, you still have to provide a works cited because it is not your own idea. So I hope this is somewhat informational for creating an outline of a speech. And if you have any questions, I'm going to try and attach this outline sketched out to the video, and thank you for listening.